if you'd asked me when I was 20 whether I'd end up on a farm, I probably would have laughed in your face.
Mm-hmm. I think my wife would say the same.
Yeah, but something happens, right? And it's usually the root is food. When I was growing up, my mum used to think, made me think that I was allergic to grass, allergic to the natural environment, allergic to seawater.
Like, you mean literally allergic?
Literally, like we'd come up in hives, come out, go out into nature. Like we'd take, 1 day vacation a year to some friend's farm, and we'd come back and we'd be all sunstroked and hived. So.
That, just as a very quick interjection, it reminds me of a time when I was a personal trainer and I was outside with a client on just a very manicured lawn, and we were doing something where she had to put her hands down on the ground. She was like, "Oh, I don't want to because of ticks." And I was like, "Here? Like this is a little lawn in the city with just and that was a reminder of that."
Well, that reminds me of dogs that who live in cities and then all of a sudden have all this freedom out in the country, and they like, "Whoa, what?"
Yeah, they're weird. Yeah, they're weirded out.
We're exactly the same. Like we're those creatures.
Yeah, so you can continue.
So I think my journey back to the agrarian lifestyle is a circuitous one because I grew up in a food business. My mother had restaurants. I was always connected to food, but growing up in the 80s and the 90s, I don't think we had a lot of knowledge around whole food. And, I was a key latch kid. My mother had restaurants. She was busy building an empire. So there wasn't a lot of time for, saying that, my mum did cook. There just wasn't a lot of time for eating together, really enjoying food together, knowing about the food that we were eating and like whole food as well. So she did actually feed us a lot of McDonald's. In fact, she did work at McDonald's at one point between restaurant gigs before she opened her restaurant. She worked there. And so I was just, I grew up with this food and I just took it for granted that this was the normal diet. And of course, what followed was a slew of health problems until when I was in my early 20s. I was living in the UK, and I just remember hearing something on Radio 4, and it was an interview with this woman who she lived kind of like quite reclusively on a little island somewhere, and she talked about how she made it a mandate for herself that she would forage the food she ate and, buy very little and, empower herself in that way and regain, take back her health. And that coincided around the same time where I had a lot of gut problems.
How old were you again?
I was about 23, 24.
Early 20s.
Yeah. And so it really clicked, like it just dawned on me because I started seeing this naturopath who gave me some probiotics, and this is way before the probiotic revolution, but it was just starting, right? And then I got hold of a book called The Probiotic Revolution when I traveled to the States, and I was taking this clay-based probiotic, and I thought, well, there's something wrong with my food. I think there must be something really wrong with what I'm eating. And I was eating well, I was cooking my food, and there's this whole conversation that's happening right now around, getting rid of ultra-processed foods, reading the back of labels. But I would say I'll take that even kind of down one level and say, actually, there's a lot of problems with conventional farming and what goes into our food, that food process there, right? And I would say it's kind of almost on par with eating like ultra-processed foods. If you're not really kind of inspecting the source of like where your food is grown, how it's grown, in what practice is it grown. And so that has led me down to this path where...
Health.
Yeah, that's right.
This podcast is proudly supported by Tessier Greenhouses. Tessier has always been one of my top choices for greenhouses and tunnels. For over 45 years, they've been manufacturing high quality and incredibly strong structures right here in North America. Their products can withstand the heavy snow loads we faced here in the Northeast, and their prices are among the best in the market. Tessier offers excellent service and expertise, always ready to help with customized solutions. I particularly appreciate their commitment to innovation and their willingness to listen to the needs of growers. At the Old Mill, we use several of their Gothic Caterpillar tunnels and micro tunnel for season extension, and I'm always impressed with their design and build quality. Without companies like Tessier, food sovereignty just wouldn't be possible. So thank you, Tessier, for helping us growers feed our community year-round. You guys rock.
Use promo code MGI10 for 10% off your first order and free shipping in select regions.
Funny how just on Monday we had a conversation with Jeff Catch of the Rodale Institute, and it was also very much focused around health, or at least his journey towards agriculture, and it was really a health journey.
I was listening I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day. He's a musician in Byron, and he said something that really struck me, and I keep thinking about going back to what he said. And he said the pure altruistic motivations for anyone to do anything is really selfish, but it's a good thing because ultimately, like, we're in the business of survival, right? We're in the business to take care of ourselves and our health and our family. And if it means that more people take back their power of growing their own food in a really healthy, sustainable way, and that's the selfish, altruistic part, then I think all the better.
Yeah, and you said, talking about people reading the labels of food, it just made me think like the real idea should be that you should not have food with labels.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's some food that is okay, but just in a general, it's like a good,
I think that's the start, right?
Yeah.
That's the start to actually like try to cook whole foods and eat whole foods. And I think this is what really good chefs do anyway.
Yeah.
We make everything from scratch. And that's the idea of homesteading, isn't it?
Yeah. We're going to get into that.
Yeah.
I think I've heard from so many people now that I'm pretty confident that that's the reality. Like, a lot of people think they're gluten intolerant, but they're actually intolerant to glyphosate.
Yes.
Which
One
is
of
in
the
the
chemicals.
wheat. And when you go to Europe where they don't use GMO seeds, just like my wife goes there, she just eats the croissant and there's not really a problem. So for me, like, I really believe that there's the connection is more to that.
It's microbial, right? Like it's like the synthetic chemicals that are destroying the microbes in the soil as well. And this is goes back to the whole probiotic thing that kind of I discovered, is that it's a gut connection. Like you can feel it, right? Like you can sense it when you're eating something, that even if it is a whole food, but it's coming from a source that is questionably grown, like you feel it. It doesn't feel good.
It reminds me, Jeff Catch said, you can't argue with your soul. And his point there was like, when you eat something and you feel everything, that goes beyond just like your pure biological.
Is your soul your microbes? I think
that is a good question. Like there's a lot to think about that.
Yeah.
Yep. So from childhood, you kind of left the restaurant world for a while, right?
And I traveled and I worked, but I came back because I was living in Tokyo. The GFC happened. I had
The GFC is
the global financial crisis.
Global financial crisis.
Yeah, around 2008. And then in 2010, like I had a 1-year-old. I was pregnant. My husband, who had lived in Japan for 16 years, he's from New Zealand. We got an offer from my mother, who said, "Come back, help me, run the restaurants." It's something that I knew as well. I'd grown up in the business, and at this point, she had 3 businesses. And then we came back, and then like more opened quite in fast succession. So when I gave birth to my second child, I was like back in the restaurant because we just opened a new restaurant, our 5th restaurant at that point. And then, more and more businesses opened up in the 10-year succession, which kind of led to the farm really, because the food my mother cooked at the restaurant is Thai, and it's still a Thai restaurant. Let's be clear. However, the produce was harder to source because not a lot of people were growing kind of like very niche kind of Southeast Asian fruit and vegetables, and the ones that were like the farms that I did visit. And not to diss on them because everyone just does the best they can with the knowledge they have, right? I remember looking around when we were at this kind of mango farm owned by an ex-American GI and his Thai wife up in Darwin, and my mom was talking to this woman about buying her farm, but then I pulled her aside and I said, "Mom, just look around you." Like at that point, I didn't really know anything, but what I did know was. There was like zero grass on the ground. There were no insects anywhere. And this is like tropical Darwin where it should be bursting with life, right? It's so warm and there's so much rain and there's so much like daylight hours and sunshine through the year. And there was like zero insect activity.
Yeah, covered with herbicide and pesticides.
Yes. And so, and this guy, again, like, he'd done the best he can. She had done the best they knew. What they were, coming out of that whole green revolution of like post-Vietnam War, they were just, everything looked great. The mangoes looked wonderful. They were completely unblemished. But yeah, so my mom like actually like credit to her and credit to kind of me as well. Like we were like, this is great. We could buy a complete farm now or find something where we could start from the ground up. And so we did. Yep.
Which year was that?
That was 2000. We started looking around 2012. We bought our farm 2014. So we're 10 years into our journey.
Ago. Does that feel kind of like, wow, 10 years?
No, it just, yeah. I mean, yeah, it goes so fast, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you start to notice the cycles.